Today's participants include Jason New, Nova Scotia Emergency Management Office, Matt Drover from Nova Scotia Power, Christina Lamy from the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, Geoff Moore from Bell, Erica Fleck from Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency, and Bill Lawlor from the Canadian Red Cross. All participants are now happy to take questions from media. A reminder for all reporters, when I call your name, please identify who your question is for. We'll start with Jean Laroche with CBC. Go ahead, Jean.
I'd like to start with a few questions for Geoff Moore, since this is the first time we're hearing from Bell. Can you tell me, Mr. Moore, why Bell customers in Nova Scotia lost their ability to make calls on the cell phones?
Yep, no, absolutely. So from the storm, obviously, I think everyone understands the impact and the damage that the storm brought down. Bell's network relies on commercial AC power to feed our sites and provide our service. Given the magnitude of the power outages and as well the duration of the storm, and thirdly, access to sites, unfortunately, some of our batteries exhausted within our sites, which resulted in a service impact to our customers. We have a team working 7/24 to provide generator backups to these sites where a fixed generator doesn't exist. And as a result of that, we aim to restore services as fast as possible. So short and sweet, really the magnitude of the impact of the commercial power source and site access was one of the biggest reasons why service went down for some of our wireless customers.
Mr. Moore, as I understand it, these are exactly the same problems that brought down your network during Hurricane Dorian. So can you tell people why the lessons learned from Dorian didn't carry forward to this hurricane?
I think the lessons learned from Dorian did carry forward into this hurricane. And again, when you look at the magnitude of the storm that hit the province and the damage that was incurred, we did everything within our capability to ensure service stayed up and continue to enable Bell's customers as well as Nova Scotians to communicate and interact with one another.
Did you have extra fuel on site at these towers to be able to refuel?
Yeah, we absolutely did. As part of our storm preparation, not only do we make sure we have access to fuel at site and with our partners, we also brought in additional generators, additional technicians from our Ontario and Quebec territories to support the restoration efforts here. Again, not understanding what the impact of the storm would be, we over-indexed to make sure that we had the necessary resources, both human and technical, to minimize the impact to our customers as a result of the storm damage.
What's your understanding of how long this outage or these outages, if there were more than one, like talk a little bit about the what happened?
So what happens is that a site will lose commercial power, and as a result, will go on its battery backup. In some cases, we have a fixed generator on site that will automatically kick in and power the site until commercial power is restored. And in other cases, we rely on a technician to actually deploy a generator to that site. And in some cases, we proactively deployed generators to sites. So it wasn't a matter of getting a device there. It was a matter of just having a technician connect the generator to the site and actually power up the site. So the combination of things were done, proactively to avoid an impact.
So how many towers did you lose?
I'll be honest, I don't have that information, here in front of me.
All right, given you did all that,
yes.
and this was an attempt to mitigate what happened in Dorian, how do you feel about the fact that it still wasn't enough?
I think the size of the storm had a significant impact to that. And I look at just the extent of the damage. And, to me, given that amount of damage to both Bell's network as well as other networks, I believe we did a very, very good job at keeping connected. And of course, with landline access in many places impacted, there was certainly a significant increased usage on the mobility network. And I believe that network handled that load very, very well. That does not mean there weren't outages and there wasn't some other customer issues during the event, and they'll continue through the event until the network is fully restored.
What do you say to your customers who don't feel Bell did a very, very good job?
We did everything we could. We were proactive. We started planning for this storm, a week in advance. We brought additional resources in. I'll say spared no expense to make sure that the network stayed up. And again, the magnitude of this storm and the amount of damage inflicted and the size of the geographical area that this storm hit, I believe we did everything possible to secure service.
What did you learn this time that you'll be able to use next time?
From my perspective, over indexing on how bad you think it could be and making sure you've got all the resources there. The planning prior to the event hitting is really something we did much differently this time coming out of Dorian and other events. And I think that's continued learning, to take that even further.
All right, Matt Drover, I have a few questions for you if you don't mind. If you could talk about, Mr. Drover, the extent of the damage you're seeing today, because I talked to your president today and he said that you were going to get drones and helicopters up and have a really good look at the damage today.
Absolutely. This is a big day for us. As I mentioned before, yesterday winds were really high all day long. So getting crews out to assess damage yesterday was definitely our priority. But today we're able to get crews out to get the buckets in the air as well and to really focus on that damage assessment. We have drones in the air. We have helicopters in the air. We're gathering all that information. We are seeing extensive damage in the eastern part of the province, specifically Cape Breton, where hundreds of poles have come down as trees have toppled over them from the hurricane force winds. But today is definitely a big day about getting all that information and putting that into our plan to restore those customers as quickly as possible.
So what did you learn today you didn't know yesterday?
Really the extensive damage. Yesterday we were out, we were seeing everything that we could. We saw that there were lots of trees down. Today we're actually able to get into those hard to reach areas to really assess our infrastructure. And what we've learned today is that there are a significant amount of poles, especially in the Cape Breton area, that have been damaged from the storm.
And do you have the manpower and material to be able to fix the system as quickly as possible?
Absolutely. That was our focus for the entire week that we used to get ready for the storm. As I've mentioned before, we brought in hundreds of crews to help with that restoration. At the beginning of the storm, we had over 700 people on the ground, and now we have over 1,000 with crews still coming in from Ontario and basically all of Atlantic Canada into the United States as well. So while we have lots of people on the ground, over 1,000 people on the ground, we're still bringing in more people every day.
And what's the biggest challenge going forward, Matt?
Really getting everywhere that we need to get to. So we're working really closely with EMO on that and clearing roads, making sure that we have access to all those hard to reach areas, getting the crews in there and repairing those poles. In some locations, we have whole streets where trees have come down and broken almost every pole along that street. And we're using all those additional crews that we brought in, as well as the EMO assistance, to really make sure that we get those poles back up in the air as quickly as possible.
NSP talked about the modeling that went into this going into the storm. How does the reality compare to the modeling you did?
What was really important about this storm was that forecast that we were seeing. All the forecasters are talking about this being a generational storm, really something that had the intensity of one and the size of Dorian. And that's what we planned for. And we had our plans ready for that magnitude of storm. And that's what we've seen.
All right, thanks, Matt. I have a couple of questions for Bill Lawlor, Canadian Red Cross. I wondered, Mr. Lawlor, what is the Red Cross doing? And we talked about, or the Prime Minister talked about matching donations. So if you could talk about the money that's needed or has come in and what you hope to do with it.
Yes, thanks very much. So yes, indeed, we have launched a national appeal to give the opportunity for Canadians to contribute, as they do often when there's some type of a disaster, and certainly one at this scale. We're very, very grateful for the opportunity that the federal government has provided with these matching contributions. We know the needs are going to be great. We also know that there will be some government assistance programs that will be implemented over time, as there are, again, with any such massive disruption and displacement of individuals. Currently, we are working with all 4 provincial governments to determine what are the needs. They may be obvious, but there are some folks who are remaining home. They're sheltering in place. Even if they don't have power, they do have a place over their head. And because of the mild temperatures that we're experiencing right now, we expect that number to remain relatively high in terms of those who will remain in the home in which they live, their primary residence. Or in some cases, people may have a secondary residence, such as a cottage that was not damaged, but their primary residence was, so they're not necessarily coming to us. Throughout, I guess, the region, we've had to date 266 individuals have registered with the Red Cross, so they've called that phone number or they've done so online where they were able to. And although that's relatively low, this is the first day. And of course, as we all know, there are many residents throughout the region who would not have access to either cellular service or landline service, and certainly not access to power. We know those numbers will increase as the days progress. We're also very well aware that individuals, just like the previous presenters had indicated, they're doing their assessments, and individuals and businesses are indeed doing their own assessments right now to determine the extent of the damage that has been ensued as a result of this. We know this will be a long operation from the Red Cross based on our experience here in Canada and abroad, and we are prepared to augment our capacity to increase support when it's required. And one thing about our support to the residents is that the residents, who may be in need, they will come to us when they are ready. Some aren't able to get out of their communities, potentially with down trees and whatnot, and they're again focusing on their primary residence to see what they need to do there before they come out and seek support from us, either with the community shelters that have been established or by some other means. We expect that the phone lines will certainly increase. And online registration will as well once the other utilities have been restored. Just to give a quick example, in Nova Scotia directly, we had 176 individuals spend the night in our various shelters throughout the province. So that may lower tonight, and it may increase. It's going to go up and down as the situation unfolds and people get a sense of, is my home structurally sound and safe to stay in? Or do I need to leave? Or has an emergency official, local authority come and advise them that in fact they do need to leave for their own personal safety? And again, those assessments will take some time and several days, if not longer, from here on in. We're doing similar activities in other provinces as well.
So what can you do for these people who call in the long run?
So initially, that point of registration, we'll be able to capture the information of the individual or the family. So are they in their own home? They've been impacted by some means. We're not going into a lot of deep questions right now. We just want to get that information of who are they, where are they, and how do we reach them, either by email or phone, and the various phone numbers of where they can be best contacted. The appeal launched late in the day yesterday. We don't have a total yet, and that's not uncommon for the first day of the appeal. In terms of the defining of what types of programming we can offer folks in the long run, that will only be known as we start to get a better sense of how much money is coming in from those donations. However, we are providing immediate support on behalf of governments, both municipal and provincial, throughout the region. So if we are contacted, for example, we are sitting in each of the provincial EOCs throughout the Atlantic region and in Quebec from the Magdalen Islands. So when there's a request that filters in through that EOC, it will be discussed with the Red Cross. Can you provide some support? It could be a request to open up another shelter, or it could be a request for a specific situation, a special needs case, for example. And we take those on one by one to determine what's the best approach for this. Right now, our focus is on supporting those congregate shelters. There are some that are managed by the Canadian Red Cross, but we also know that, which is very common, there are some within the communities that the communities themselves has opened up. Could be a fire hall, a local community center, what have you. And we don't have our eye on all of those, but the communities, particularly in the rural centers, they know where to go and to gravitate to if they're looking for, a place to stay, if they need a cot or a blanket or what have you, or just a place to charge a mobile device for those centers that do have power. Again, we'll continue to receive those requests. Our phone line has not been very busy from a disaster response perspective. We've had certainly people call to register, not a lot of requests for support. I mean, again, notwithstanding the 176 individuals in Nova Scotia alone who required some overnight sheltering. But again, we think that that's in part due to the lack of access to utilities. And as the days progress, we are expecting the demands and needs to increase with each passing day.
Thank you, Jean. We're going to move to Ian Nathanson of the Cape Breton Post. Go ahead with your questions, Ian.
Okay, my first question for Christina Lamy of CBRM. I'm going to make sure I say CBRM this time, not outside CBRM. I wanted to find out, with regard to the conference centers, we have them listed today. Are they going to be continuing through the week, or are we just going on a day-by-day basis?
It'll be a day-by-day basis. I'll be looking to update that list for tomorrow by end of day today.
Okay. And I guess a message for, we'll say, Geoff at Bell. Was there any opportunity at any time during this that Bell could have, just recently what we learned from the Rogers power outages, was there any time that is Bell specific to this, or could there have been a chance to switch to another network during this outage?
Very good question. Given the impact of the storm, and it wasn't a single service provider or a single carrier that had issues, it really impacted a geography. So I will say that opportunity didn't present itself. But what did happen, Bell, along with I'll call it our competitors, but also partners here in Atlantic Canada, collaborated to make sure that from an overall service perspective, we were working together to make sure that Nova Scotians were able to access communication services. So as much as we are competitors, we also work very, very closely, recognizing, we're industry partners. We need to be here to support the residents of Nova Scotia and all the other provinces.
Would that be something that Bell would consider in the future in case one of these storms ever ravages us again?
Absolutely.
Okay. Ian, do you have any other questions, or?
Actually, one more question for Bill to Red Across. How much? I was just told from CBRN that there was a situation with the Red Cross facility at Center 200. Is the Red Cross still going to be playing an important role in the CBRN despite that incident?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the specifics of that incident, but indeed, we have no intentions of withdrawing our support in any of the communities throughout the region. We'll be there for the long haul with this, and we know it will indeed be a long haul. And in some cases, again, not specific to whatever you're inferring to, but we have had to change locations. That's been due to either disruption in utilities or increased demand where we had to move to a larger size. But no, indeed, Red Cross is there for as long as we are required.
Thank
okay,
you.
Yeah, you verified it was just a power outage. Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you very much, Ian. Let's move on to Pat Healy with the Laker. Go ahead, Pat, with your questions.
Hi, this is for Erica. Can you talk a little bit about the roadside cleanup of branches that will be taking place? When can residents expect the debris to be picked up?
Thanks very much, Pat. So we'll be publishing a public service announcement very soon, actually this afternoon, with the sites where residents can drop off brush debris for that. And we'll be getting, again, that out very, very shortly this afternoon.
Pat, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. For Nova Scotia Power, Matt Drover. In Fall River and Sackville area, there are streets that have power and the neighboring ones that don't. How is progress coming along to restore those without power? And why would this happen?
As I mentioned before, today is a big day for us from a damage assessment standpoint. We are focused on the biggest power lines that have been affected, so those that feed the most customers. In some locations, the way that geography works, there may be neighbors that get on before the others. But rest assured, we do have a significant amount of crews in the Sackville Fall River area that will be focusing on those outages and making sure that they're restored as quickly as possible.
Great. Pat, anything more from you, or is that it?
I have two more questions.
Go for it.
All right. Again, this one's for Matt. I've heard from some areas that aren't not on the outage map, but they're out. Should people be calling the outage line if they are out and not on the outage map?
Absolutely. Sometimes when people call in, that may occur. It is a rare occurrence, but if it does happen, please call back and log your outage again. You can also post your outage on our outage map. So if you go to our external outage map, there's information there where you can post your outage, and that'll get up on the outage map as well. But if your outage isn't showing, please call us and let us know.
And my last question, sorry, Marla. And my last question is for Erica. Why were no conference centers opened in the Fall River area. The closest one for residents of Fall River, Wellington area is Beaverbank or Acadia Hall in Sackville. Just is there an explanation to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we had large pockets of people with power in Fall River, we had to prioritize the comfort centers where the greatest power outages were had for the longest periods, and with the amount of staffing and volunteers that we had at the time. And we continued to adjust those multiple times a day.
Thank you very much.
Great. I understand Jean Laroche with CBC has a few more questions, so we'll jump back to him. Go ahead, Jean.
Mr. Lawlor, how much money has the Red Cross raised as a result of their appeal?
I don't have that total, since we just launched the appeal yesterday afternoon and being the weekend. We've certainly had some outreach from corporations, as an example, who have pledged. But again, we won't have totals probably for another day or two, and then we will be regularly reporting totals as that fund increases.
We'll check back. Jason Mew, gasoline supply on Cape Breton Island. Apparently, a lot of gas stations are running out. What's the province doing to try and facilitate that?
So we're working with Imperial and Irving, and we're in constant contact with those representatives. We did reach out to see if they can provide a little more information to the public in regards to how they're going to resupply their stations. But both Imperial and Irving were without power overnight, and they do have power in their for Imperial and Irving in the Halifax area. And currently now they are filling and sending fuel trucks as we speak to Cape Breton. So that resupply is definitely underway.
Last but not least, Jason, what should people do or stop doing to help you and others who are trying to get life back to normal?
Well, I guess we're asking people to really stay off the roads and kind of hunker down in their homes if possible. And if you don't need a full tank of gas, don't get a full tank of gas, because right now those fuel providers are in the process of resupplying fuel throughout the province, and especially Cape Breton. Coming to work this morning, I saw several fuel trucks ahead of me heading east. So definitely the resupply is underway, but really just to stay off the road so Nova Scotia Power can do their work, restoring the power and allowing for the, I guess, an unencumbered transportation of goods throughout the province.
Merci, Marla.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. That concludes today's media availability. Please continue to stay safe, everyone. Bye.